Friday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Welcome to the program. And of course, I am doing this wonderful thing live, which means I can take phone calls. 617-396-4958 is the number. 617-396-4958. My guest is Stuart Sobel. He is an investigative reporter who has who's done a lot of research on who killed Bugsy Siegel. Stuart, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, before we go into the topic, I'd like you to talk a little bit about how you got into this subject. What's your background as a journalist, and what brought you to this?
Well, I got into it in a more fortuitous manner. I knew the son of the subject matter that we're talking about, not Bugsy Siegel, but B. Sedway. B. Sedway was the wife of mobster Little Mo Sedway, who was the chief lieutenant to Meyer Lansky, who was head of the Jewish mob.
Okay.
And I never knew Mo Sedway. He died in January of 1952, and I met Robbie Sedway in October of 1952. We were both still in single digits, still 9 years of age,
Okay.
and we met in grammar school. And
were you all out in Las Vegas at the time, or where was?
No, we were in Beverly Hills.
Okay.
Yeah, we went to a school called Hawthorne School in Beverly Hills,
Mm-hmm.
and we went all the way through junior high there. And we were friends. We were good friends. And you know how it is when you're a kid, you're in and out of each other's homes all the time.
Right.
And you know everybody's parents, you know their brothers, you know their dogs, you know everybody in the family, just like they know yours.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew everybody in the Sedway family, except for Mo Sedway. And it was just a friendly atmosphere.
Okay.
One day about 30 years ago, Robbie and I happened to see each other after having an absence of about 25, 30 years. And he knew that I was writing, and he knew that his mother had a story to tell. And he broached me in this manner. He said, "You want to hear a real old Las Vegas story?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "You want to know who killed Bugsy Siegel?" And I knew who Bugsy Siegel was. It was before the film came out,
right,
or anything else. And I said, "Yeah, sure." It wasn't like, "Oh yeah, tell me." It was like, "Yeah, sure. Who killed Bugsy Siegel?" He said, "You know him?" I said, "I know him." He said, "Who was it?" And he told me. And he said, "Moose." Now, Moose was his mother's boyfriend, now husband, and also the killer of Bugsy Siegel.
Okay. Now, first of all, Bugsy Siegel, I mean, we could talk a little bit about his background. He's considered to be the founder of the mob in Las Vegas. He was a big gambler, casino controller, very glamorous fellow, very handsome. The killing of Bugsy Siegel was very brutal. You know, there were pictures of it with his eyes gouged out. This was in the 1960s. And it was, you know, we all assumed that it was some kind of an inter-mob type hit between rival gangs or whatever. But what did you discover? Why did Moose kill Bugsy Siegel?
Well, just backing up a little bit, there was so much in the way of speculation. He owed a tremendous amount, millions of dollars, to the mob and to the mafia. Mafia is Italian, Sicilian, mob is Jewish. He owed millions of dollars, a budget of 1.1 million, which was
big money back then.
Yeah, it grew to over $6 million,
right.
and
in today's dollars, we're looking like 20 million. Probably.
Of course. but they were building a palace in the desert, and it was a beautiful conceived idea, and it was not Siegel's idea. This was not Siegel's hotel. It was the hotel of a fellow named Billy Wilkerson. And Billy Wilkerson was a genius in his own right, a creative genius, a financial genius. He was ahead of his time. He has a company that is still going strong today that he started called The Hollywood Reporter. That was his. And he said, Hollywood needs a house organ. It was when the films were still silent. But he said, Hollywood needs a house organ. So he started The Hollywood Reporter. He opened up some very high-end, ultra chic cuisine restaurants that are still known today. Ciro's, La Trocadero, La Rue. They were all high-end and very well managed restaurants. They were restaurants of his creation. He created the interior, he created the menu. Everything was of the highest order.
Okay.
And so this hotel was his idea. And so he wanted to have a hotel like no other hotel in the world. And he wanted to put in, for one thing, he wanted to put in something that no other hotel had at the time, and that was air conditioning.
Uh-huh.
The only time they had air conditioning.
Good idea in Las Vegas. Right?
Well, something, the only time they had air conditioning was industrial.
Okay.
If you had a meat locker, they were in. But
Right.
to have it for residential purposes, it was a new concept. Everything he had was a new concept.
So he invented air conditioning. What did he should get a Nobel Prize?
No, he didn't invent it. No,
Well,
he didn't invent it.
Popularized it, I should say.
He wanted to be the first. He was the first hotel in the world to have air conditioning.
Incredible.
And this is back. And when they had a high-end hotel in the desert, they would call it a carpet joint. To have a carpet in the desert with all that sand.
Okay.
But
so what was his connection to Bugsy Siegel, or Bugsy Siegel's connection to him?
Well, Billy Wilkerson owed a tremendous amount of gambling money. And so he needed an infusion of cash. His hotel was in trouble. It was already half built. And the framing was up. A lot of the construction was up. And so Mo Sedway was running Mo Sedway and a fellow named Gus Greenbaum, who was part of Al Capone's gang, were running the casino at the El Cortez. Mm-hmm. It was a hotel that Lansky and Siegel and Sedway and Greenbaum had purchased just to kind of test out the casino hotel combination.
And this was like late 1950s, right?
Oh, no. This is in the 30s.
Oh, no, okay, good.
In the 30s, yeah. The casino, the Flamingo opened up in the late 40s. It opened up in 47.
Oh, wow. One of the most famous and glamorous hotels of its day.
And also, Siegel was only alive for 3 months after the hotel opened.
Okay.
And it was a smash success. Once he opened, he had a false start in the beginning when he opened it up on Christmas Day in 1946. Mm-hmm. The hotel was only partially complete. And he opened it up to torrential rainstorm. And there was only a rudimentary road going from Los Angeles to Las Vegas at the time.
So Siegel then opened that hotel, or Wilkinson opened it?
No, Siegel opened it.
Okay.
He pushed Wilkerson out at the point of a gun,
okay.
and said this was his. And there were
And was
reasons for
Siegel
that.
connected to like you say the Jewish mob? I mean, was it like a major syndicate? Was he affiliated with Meyer Lansky, who was kind of almost an international mobster who had connections to Lucky Luciano, who
Yes,
was the Italian mob and who was actually working with the U.S. government during World War II to help defeat the Nazis?
that's correct. That's correct. And Siegel tried to help eliminate the Nazis as well. But that's another story.
Another story. Yeah.
I'll tell you. As far as Siegel is concerned, he was instrumental in completing the hotel after he pushed Wilkerson out of the project.
Right.
And it wasn't Siegel's project to begin with. It was Mo Sedway who took the idea to Meyer Lansky and sold it to Lansky and the five members of the commission, the five families of New York. They were the ones who initially funded it.
And they were the Italian families in New York, like
that was the Italian.
And them. Now, Siegel, it sounds to me like was a bit of a front man for Lansky. Is that right?
No, he wasn't a front man.
Okay.
He was supposed to be a front man, but he could never front for anybody. He could never take orders from anybody.
He's a big personality, for sure.
Yeah, it was a megalomaniac on steroids. He could not listen to anybody. After a while, he wouldn't listen to anybody, even his best friend, Mo Sedway. Now, Mo Sedway was the chief lieutenant to Meyer Lansky and had been from the very beginning.
Okay.
When they were very young kids,
So Sedway was Lansky's kind of guy. He was sort of his point man, who would go out and manage the mob enterprises, which were gambling and loan sharking and drugs. Well, drugs came later, but criminal activities.
Not only that, he was more than that. He wouldn't manage it. He would give his blessings on projects. So if Lansky came to him with a project, he would go over the project, make sure all the terms and conditions were correct. And from there, if he gave his blessing on it, then Lansky would do it. And the same thing with Siegel. Siegel would come to Sedway, and if he had any projects, and if he gave his blessings on it, he would do it. And Sedway got a piece of every action that he blessed. And Siegel,
this is a little historic background. I think it's safe to say that the American mob infrastructure, Italian, Jewish, otherwise, they really got a lot of their money from prohibition and from illegally exporting booze from Canada, and they like over Lake Erie, which is like a mob.
That's true.
Mob boats and all of that. And you ended up having big families becoming extremely rich from that, including the Kennedy family.
Oh yes,
and you had the Irish mob as well. Certainly here in Boston, you had that. And it really was a corrupting influence. They really were able to move into a business that was people wanted and make hay out of it. And then after Prohibition ended, they got into bookkeeping, bookmaking, I should say, and gambling, and eventually that led to casinos.
That's true. Now, casinos was a boon. Not because it was more lucrative, because everything they went into was lucrative, but the Achilles heel for all of these mobsters was not paying their income tax. Now, income tax is only 1% of their income, but how can they explain having millions of dollars and paying 1% when they had no business? There was no business.
That's where Al Capone got in trouble, right?
Income tax, exactly.
Sure.
Exactly.
I mean, they're basically, money laundering and hiding money and offshoring money, which is what they do now.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it, they run afoul of the tax man. That's what might apparently happen to Hunter Biden and other modern criminals. But
That's true.
let's not go into that. We'll end up getting banned on YouTube. All right, so back to Bugsy Siegel. He owed like a lot of money. He went behind in his debt. He was being very arrogant. He felt like he was above everyone.
Yes.
Why did they kill him?
Well, let me back up a little bit. He didn't owe a lot of money. He owed an enormous amount of money. They were fronting him $1.1 million, which was the estimate that Billy Wilkerson gave to build and complete his hotel, as Wilkerson described it. And Siegel changed the plans and watered it down to a shadow of what Wilkerson's vision was, and the cost went up to $6 million. Now, how can that happen?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you how it happened.
Okay.
Skim City. They skimmed everything. And the biggest skimmer of all, to the surprise of Ben Siegel, was Virginia Hill.
Who was Virginia Hill?
Virginia Hill was Siegel's girlfriend.
Okay.
And it was in her house that he was killed. And when he was killed, she was in Europe at the time.
So why was he killed?
Huh?
Why was he killed? Who killed him? Why?
I'll tell you exactly why. But what I'm doing is I'm telling you why, but then backing up of the reasons behind it is where the story is. He was killed because he threatened the life of Mo Sedway, his best friend. Siegel was the best man at their wedding, and he was the godfather to their firstborn. But
why would he want to threaten Sedway?
Well, Sedway was the accountant, the person responsible who sold this project to Lansky and to the commission, the 5 families. And they were looking to Sedway for the numbers, what was being spent and where it was going. And Siegel was not giving it up. He was not telling them. And he kept stonewalling them, and they kept pressuring him. And as a result, Sedway's health started diminishing. He had ulcers, he had a bad heart. He had all of this pressure, and he wasn't getting any help from his very good friend, Ben Siegel.
Mm-hmm.
They were such good friends that when Mo wanted to marry Bee, who was 17, fresh out of high school, and Mo was 42, when he wanted to marry Bee, he went to his family, his business family. The first person he came to was Ben Siegel.
Right.
Second person he came to was Meyer Lansky. He got the blessings of both. Not that he needed it, but they were so close that I want to show you my girlfriend. I love her. I want to marry her. So they met privately, both of them, separate from one another. And so they were all very close.
Mm-hmm.
But
it still doesn't explain why Siegel would really turn on him like that, and try to and there would be this incredible falling out or riff or something.
Well, he turned on him because Mo kept pressuring him for numbers.
I see. Okay.
And Siegel got tired of Mo being on him all the time and wanting to know what certain things cost. He was being double billed by subcontractors. And of course, he was splitting that double billing with the contractors. So he would take a taste from the contractors as well as just skimming money from the building fund. And
as was his girlfriend, apparently.
Well, if you look at the film Bugsy, and the fact that B. Sedway was a technical advisor on the film,
mm-hmm.
because of her knowledge of Bugsy Siegel, then you'll see what went on. And in part of that, you'll see that Siegel turns over the Flamingo checkbook to his girlfriend, Virginia Hill.
Okay.
Mo Sedway was handling it before. He took it away from Sedway, dumped all the funds into a new account, and gave it to his girlfriend to handle. She didn't know what she was doing.
Siegel just became too greedy and too arrogant, and he ended up and wasn't paying attention to the fact that he was screwing around with some very dangerous people.
Well, he was dangerous himself, and he thought he was above the law, above the mob law,
right?
And he wasn't. And they were planning to kill him. They had a meeting in Havana. When I say they, I'm talking about the mafia. The heads of the mafia had a meeting in Havana on Christmas 1946, the same time the Flamingo was opening, and Lansky was there, and all of the other heads of the mobs. And Lansky and Lucky Luciano, who was head of the American Mafia, were very close from the time they were kids. And when Luciano tried to have his gang steal Lansky's lunch money as a kid,
right.
And Lansky fought back. He got beat up, but he fought back. And so Luciano saw something special in him. So they became friends for life after that. And they were the ones who combined, called the combination, the Jews and the Italians. They were the ones that put them together, because Sicilians and Italians never wanted to mix with anybody.
Right, very clever. That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, they talk about that in the Godfather movies. They show how one of the sons was like half Irish, and he was seen as like a lieutenant, but he could never really be on the inside because he wasn't a full-blooded Sicilian.
Oh, okay.
Anyways,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and the families are very tight. It's like the old saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, right?
That's right.
So
very good.
Whereas the Jewish mobsters, I don't know, they kind of were second fiddle to the Italian mobsters in the United States. And they often played roles of like kind of couriers, and they would carry messages, and they would perform services. I mean, Meyer Lansky, I think, was an accountant. No, you're going on a wrong track.
Okay. They were separate. They didn't curry for anyone but themselves.
I see.
And they did call Meyer Lansky the mob accountant. And they called Sedway the mob auditor. He went behind Lansky to make sure everything was correct. See, Sedway was a very quiet, introspective person. He was not a killer at heart. And he never personally killed anyone, although he did hire Murder Incorporated to kill somebody once. And Siegel put his participation in that as a wedding gift to Sedway. But
was Siegel a killer?
Who?
Siegel.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
He was a killer.
Sure.
Absolutely. And he enjoyed it. He would go out of his way to be part of the group and of killers. And it didn't matter if it was by himself or with a group. Him it was
do the deal. Yeah.
He was part.
These are really rotten people, all of them, anyways. But
absolutely, there's nothing glamorous about him.
We're not talking about. I think it was recently the late F. Lee Bailey, who I interviewed before he passed away a couple of years ago, and he represented Barboza, who was one of the most vicious mafia killers. Terrible, horrible man. And he was asked when Barboza died, a reporter asked him how he felt about it. And he goes, our society is no worse for wear without him around. And he was a lawyer. So anyways, but what happened to Segway at the end?
Well, unusual that Sedway died of natural causes. He wasn't killed by anybody.
Okay.
But the reason Siegel was killed was because he threatened the life of Mo Sedway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would think that Siegel would have been savvy enough to know that that would have been a death sentence, but maybe he had become so full of himself that it didn't. He thought he was beyond that.
Well, it's more than that. He knew there was a death sentence when he refused to pay back any of the Flamingo money that he had borrowed, even to make the first payment when they started becoming successful in the hotel. Right. He said, I'll pay him. I'll get around to it. And they kept pressuring him. And there was a hit out for him.
Sure.
And Lansky said, let's just give it another shot. And let me talk to him. And then Siegel was killed. Yeah. And that's why the organized crime, the mob, the mafia were so perplexed. They didn't know who did it. Where did it come from? And why they never caught the killer. Do you know that it's the oldest cold case in America at 47 years?
Hey, you mentioned that, and you've solved it. You've basically studied this for 40 years, and you've basically brought the thing in with evidence.
Well, let me put it this way. I didn't solve it because it's an unsolvable case.
Okay.
And by definition, you cannot solve an unsolvable case. Right. The only thing that I did was I was taken by the hand and gently shown the truth, how it happened, why it happened, and the circumstances surrounding it. That's what I was shown.
Okay.
But I know
this happened like, what was it, 62, around that time?
47.
47, Bugsy Siegel. Okay.
Yeah.
How did that affect the whole mob infrastructure in Las Vegas going forward after that?
Well, as one book put it, and they said it was called The Greenfeld Jungle. And they had a passage in there. They said after Siegel was killed and when the sun broke over the horizon in Las Vegas that day, the whole town was bathed in gold. That's how they took it.
That's a good description. And Vegas, of course, continued on with mob connections. There's all these legends about the so-called Rat Pack and their involvement in it.
Yeah, but the mob connections got less and less.
Okay.
And by the mid 50s, it was practically nothing, because if you remember the Rat Pack and Frank Sinatra with his Cal Neva Lodge and everything else, he lost his license because he associated with mobsters. They were not going to give a license to own a casino to a mobster or anyone associated with them.
Okay. So what is it like today in Vegas? Is the mob is gone there, or how
it's all corporate.
It is.
It's all, yeah. There's no mob in the Vegas now.
Because I know that in Boston, where I am, I think the mob, the back was broken in the 1980s with the Angulo case, and the FBI actually did a pretty good job eventually. I mean, of course, they were corrupted as well when it came to looking at the Irish mob of Billy Bulger, but that's a whole different story. But either way, I mean, they no longer have the footprint in Boston that they did in the Boston that I was growing up in, which was a different story. And of course, there was also a Jewish mob connection in Boston with Doc Sagansky, but that's all history now. And in the case of Sagansky, his children went legit, and they basically got into the hotel business. But I think that a lot of that's cleaned up, and perhaps today's organized crime has more to do with drug cartels coming in from Central America and
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
But is there still an infrastructure of a Jewish mob in the United States at this point, or is that history?
That's history. Yeah. The Jewish mob went for one generation only, and that was it.
Yeah, no, and it
All
was
the
basically a lot of newly arrived immigrant groups get into organized crime, and and then they kind of go legit in the next generation once they've got their ill-gotten gains. I suppose the Kennedy family is a good example of that.
Well, Joe Kennedy, the father of the president, John
Yeah,
Kennedy, was the biggest bootlegger of them all. And the
yeah,
mafia hated him. They hated him. Why? Because he was bulletproof. His best friend was FDR. There was no way he was going to get busted. So he would bring in liquor from Ireland, from Scotland, and it was and he was the one who was supplying Arnold Rothstein, Marlansky.
right.
But and so the public was concerned that the Pope was going to run America when if Kennedy was elected.
Yeah.
They had no idea, or they did, but no one spoke of it.
I think that Harry Truman said it best when that issue came up. He says, "I'm not worried about the Pope. I'm worried about the Pop." The father.
That's a pop. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Now, Meyer Lansky, I think I seem to recall that he eventually had to face charges, and he tried to emigrate to Israel as a
That's
Jew.
right.
And the Israelis said, "Forget it. We're not. We do welcome Jews, but not this time. You're not going to. Israel's not a haven for criminals."
Right.
So what
Right.
happened to Lansky?
From what I understand, he immigrated to Florida, like a lot of,
Right. Okay.
and that was it. He died of natural causes. He and Sedway died of natural causes,
I see.
and it was always Sedway who was the person who was controlling things and giving his blessing for Siegel and for Lansky and for a lot of other people too. And he was, but I went to Mo Sedway's cemetery, his crypt where he's buried.
Mhm.
He's not buried; he's above ground. But and I say this is where irony and karma collide, because Siegel tried to kill Sedway. Sedway, in fact, kills Siegel, and now they live and repose less than 100 steps from each other at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. But just like life, you had to see Sedway first before you could see Siegel. And
Great gatekeeper.
yeah, that's right. But Sedway had the marquee. He had marquee value because he had the larger portion of his casket showing, where Siegel had the foot portion. Sedway had the length portion, and it was a much larger presentation. But I'd never seen this until I saw Hugh Hefner's grave. There are lipstick marks all over Bugsy Siegel's.
Oh my God. Well, Siegel was very glamorous. I mean, he was very into like public image. He
That's
dressed
true.
stunningly, and he liked beautiful women, and he always had like starlets, and he was almost like kind of a Jewish version of Al Capone.
Well, in looks, yeah, he was. He was a poster child of bad behavior, like Al Capone. And the only reason you think of Al Capone and Bugsy Siegel in the same breath is because they both loved the limelight. They both loved notoriety. They both had their pictures and names in the paper all the time.
That's
where the mob and the mafia hated that. If you remember in the beginning of The Godfather, where they had the wedding scene and there were reporters outside of the wedding, photographers, and Sonny Corleone Santino came out and he grabbed a camera and threw it to the ground and threw $20 on the ground. Because these photographers were trying to get pictures of who was there. So what they do, they were taking pictures of license plates of people who were parked there to see if they could figure out who actually came to the wedding.
Right. Well, they wanted to operate in the shadows because they were, involved in the business, I mean, they don't necessarily. Now, I want to ask you, Stuart, because I'm kind of reaching toward the end of the conversation, and this is just an opinion on your part. I don't know if you have any firsthand knowledge. It's not exactly related to the Siegel story, but you do know a little bit about how the mob works. And do you think that they had any involvement in the Kennedy assassination? And if so, what do you think it was?
The Kennedy assassination, there's a lot of speculation, but how do you get two nobodies like Lee Harvey Oswald and Sirhan killing two Kennedy brothers, top guys? These are nobodies with no experience, killing them. And, the case is closed. Hey, it's closed for me too. I don't care.
It seems like it's, the type of thing that doesn't just happen like that, like the lone gunman, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's been a lot of speculation about that. I just wondered if you had any insights. So Stuart,
no.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
I mean, a good book on this topic, by the way, was written by Dr. Jerome Corsi, who I've interviewed and whom I admire, called The Killing of Kennedy, where he goes through all of the different conspiracy theories around that, including the mob theory. And he doesn't discount any of them. He gets rid of the stupid ones, but he looks at others where there is some question, but he doesn't claim anything. I mean, these are all theories.
Yeah, sure.
But of course, the thing that he brings up at the beginning of his book, which I think is outrageous, is that the government still has classified a ton of information about this. I mean, that's, everyone involved in the Kennedy assassination is now dead. And there's no national security issues. And even President Trump tried to release the information. And as president of the United States, he couldn't do it. He released some of it, but it's so deep and so classified that there must have been something going on there that is secretive, and we're never going to find out in our lifetime.
I don't think so. When it happened, I was 17 years old, and I remember Ted Kennedy saying, "We'll release everything 50 years from now." Well, 50 years has come and gone.
Oh yeah, no, we're never going to get to it, and
we'll never know.
Which I think goes to the fact that there's something going on there that is too ugly or too inflammatory to reveal. So, Stuart, where can my viewers and listeners go to find out information about you and your work, your books, your articles?
I appreciate the question. I'll tell you, if they go to if they go to queenbeeandbugsy.com, they'll see everything that's going on. queenbeeandbugsy.com. And the book is in manuscript form. It's a nice, tight, compact 100,000-word manuscript. And it's, I don't have a publisher yet, but I am
not available
talking.
yet. Yeah, because I was trying to find it. So when you get that published, can you drop me a note and we'll do a talk on it?
I would enjoy that. Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right.
I enjoyed it, Charles.
Thank you, Stuart. Same here. Have a good one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.